and welcome to the Learning Council's webinar on hybrid schools, putting AI personalization to work now. This is Leilani Coffin, your host from the Learning Council, and glad to have everyone with us today. So we want to get started with just introducing all of our panelists and our illustrious underwriter. So first of all, we have with us today Lisa Lund, who is the Director of Educational Technology and Library Services at Montour Public Schools. Lisa, we're going to make sure you're unmuted if you want to say hello.
Hi, this is Lisa Lund, and yes, I am the Director of Ed Tech and Library Services out here in Colorado. Good to meet everyone.
Good to have you. We also have with us today Justin Aglio, who is the Director of K4 Academic Achievement and K12 Education from Montour School District. Justin, I hope I said your last name right.
Yeah, it's like Aglio, like alley-oop of basketball. The G silent, it's tricky on you there. But welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Excited to be here to share and learn. Thank you so much for having me.
It's great. And then also, someone I've known for a really long time, Joe McBreen, who's the Chief Technology Officer at St. Vrain Valley Schools in Colorado.
Yeah, hello. Actually, I have a job title update. I recently retired, and so now I'm working as an artificial intelligence consultant for St. Vrain and other school districts. So thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to the discussion.
That's great. And what a great, unique title. I love it. So today we have with us Chad Stevens, who's the K12 education leader at AWS. I want to start out with sharing, after Chad speaks to you about what AWS is doing, which is a really great intro to what's happening with AI in the first place, then give our featured panelists some time to discuss some of the imperatives in the market that Learning Council sees actually happening for prepping them for their key questions that we want them to respond to. And then we'll have some open Q&A at the end. So Chad, can you speak up? I want to make sure I can hear you.
Yep, sure thing. This is Chad. All right, well, I'm just going to do a real brief, this is a deep topic, but a brief overview of AWS and really artificial intelligence and machine learning. So my name is Dr. Chad Stevens. I'm our leader for K12 Education at AWS. And so if you go to the next slide, I kind of wanted to level set a little bit because you hear the term artificial intelligence, machine learning, talk a little bit about how we at AWS define those. And I think how a lot of people probably define it is really artificial intelligence as really something that enables a computer to mimic human intelligence. And then the subparts of that are really what we consider to be machine learning, those patterns. And then kind of a level deeper is really what we consider to be deep learning, which we won't talk too much about, but you think about like speech and image recognitions and things like that. We won't have time to go there today, but maybe another time. So we're seeing ML really growing everywhere, right? You actually, don't see as much education on this slide, but I really show you this to kind of share that artificial intelligence, machine learning is everywhere. And I think really that bottom left-hand corner around personalization is somewhere that we think this will really come to fruition in education. So just real quick in terms of the way I think about this in schools, and if you want to go forward 3, it'll be a little bit faster. We really look at this from automation, which is really optimizing current things. So there's automation that you can do today as a K12 school district. For example, we have servers that do predictive scaling that know it's the fall and time to grow because kids are coming to school. We go in then to augmentation, really helping things go increase productivity. And we have tools like that that are available today. And then moving forward, enrichment, really adding to the measures and the existing analytics and really moving kind of beyond kind of the current measures and data analytics that you see. And then finally, we really look at it as invention. And this is the part that I get really excited about when I think about education. I'm a former principal and teacher before I got into technology. And I think kind of reinventing and really taking a different look at the way we look at data in schools is really what gets me most excited. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I said this a few years ago at COSIN, you'll never have less data than you have right this second. When you think about your school districts, even though many of us are just taking a deep breath from remote learning, data continues to grow at an exponential rate in all of those areas that I showed earlier. while schools are really, data rich a lot of times, and what I'd say information poor, in that we have a lot of data, but we really need that data to be easy, complete, actionable, shareable, and secure. And I think about these 5 V's: the volume, the velocity, the variety, the veracity, and the variability of this data is changing super rapid. And so how we're able to visualize and value it is really important. So one of my favorite examples, I like baseball, and I challenge schools with this, is who is going to be the StatCast AI of K-12 schools? Maybe that person's on this phone. Maybe that's a state that we're talking to at ABS that wants to change the way they look at it. But a few years ago, I went back and read the case study. In 2015, Major League Baseball came to AWS and said, we've been collecting data for 143 years, and it's all been manual, and we really haven't done a lot with it. And we want to think about the way we think about data differently. And I know that due to COVID-19, there's no baseball season right now. But back when there was a baseball season, you see things like exit velocity and all these different types of measures. It's a little bit mind-boggling to me to think that those measures really didn't even exist before 2015. Those were things that we weren't really thinking about, that are really common terms all the way down to Little League Baseball, if you watch the Little League World Series. So that's where I think about where we position ourselves in education. How are we going to take that type of model, this model where there's a lot of data, we know we have a lot of data, but how are we going to use it differently and better that ultimately is going to really impact students? So those are my 5 minutes are up. My watch is beeping. I'm going to hand it over to the panelists, but thanks to the Learning Council for having us. I'm really excited to stay on the line and learn from the panel myself.
Well, you got everybody excited with you, Chad. This is really a moment in education where what the Learning Council is hearing is a need for what AWS is now sinking their teeth into for schools, because there's a lot of questions about what's going on with the kids that are out there remote learning. We're trying to move a model in schools and districts into a phase where, yes, you're not with all 30 kids all the time. And even going into the fall, there's rotational schedules being discussed and block schedules, and it's just getting kind of wild. So you're not going to be eyeballing the kids all the time. We had a need to rein in data before this all started happening, but now the need is actually an imperative. You have to go this particular direction. So Chad, so happy to have you with us today. I want to give a little background from the Learning Council about this idea of putting AI to work right now for your schools and districts. Why should you care about that, and how are you going to do it? So we have the panelists on here that will be able to talk to you about how they're sort of noodling on where they're going or where they have already gone with even addressing anything having to do with AI. But this starts with the why. Of one of the big whys in the market is that consumerized learning competition is really, really real right now. Homeschooling has taken off. Every parent in America has been confronted with what it's going to be like to try to do distance learning, remote learning. Some of them are saying, we're out. This is real. And some of this polls that have gone out in the consumer markets, 50% of the American public is considering not coming back. So you have a need as a school or district to look at how well you're executing data to drive achievement, to drive personalization, to drive cost control, those other 3 bullet points right there, in order to make sure you have kids coming back. You have enough appeal to say, yeah, we got it. You're going to try to, Google around and try to figure your way out in homeschooling or hire a service or try to go to an online school, which, great option. But here's what we're doing that is super awesome. So it's sort of a push for the AI consideration by your schools and districts in order to sort of drive value. So that's really the big why. The how is forming, but definitely there are some easy hows and there are some much more complex hows. The scale of that has not been fully developed yet. We're looking at it as the Learning Council. Some things that are past resources you can download now are our analytics and onboarding special report. It includes academic diagnostics. It includes a framing of all the fields in the market, including how to read charts, because there's a lot of executives out there in education who forgot the statistical analysis class they learned in college and need a little bit of reminder how this all works. Also, both scales, manual to digital school leadership are in that special report, and they're explained in there. If you go so far as to take the EduJedi Leadership Society's analytics course, there's even a game on digital digital logic that gives you scenarios, and then you have to play the cards for which scenario of logic that actually is. So you can train your executives actually to think in terms of logical sequencing of data. So AI starts with data fields. So Learning Council has taken a deep look at what the data fields actually are, and we stack them up to say, here's ones that are internal to you, here's external, but where you need to start in AI is what fields do you actually collect, which ones are redundant, and all of that. At the bottom is your student data framework systems. It's mostly manually entered into student information systems, learning management systems, financial systems, HR systems. The data is all over the place. As Chad was just talking about, it's an amazing trove of data, some very redundant. And then it may not even be time stamped correctly. So now looking at what your data actually is doing and how your fields of collection are allowing you to manipulate it later, those are all important considerations. And you go up to student data derived from the framework systems, such as time on task or numbers of login. And then you go up from that to student data derived from the general systems. Those are things like, network log, how did the student hit the network at all? They're outside the framework systems. And then you've got at the highest level a little stack here is student data derived from courseware systems of what's going on inside this coursework. These totally different fields that you're used to looking at, and they're buried in those off-site courseware systems that are professional grade courseware. So I'm not going to go through all these slides. They're in the deck that we'll be sending out, but the student data and framework systems, we've listed most of it that we know about from our surveys. Student digital derived from framework systems, so you can take a look at all your data fields. This is the general, and this is the courseware data. What we want to make sure people understand is that what's happening right now is there's a divergence between what is adaptive digital curriculum that has its own embedded AI. It's auto-cohorting kids based on reading or Lexile level or in math portrait level. It's shunting books around based on that. It's watching keystroke information. And then there's the data level that is coming out of those framework systems. These two things don't normally talk to each other, and we think that the future is they actually will be. So with that in mind, I'm re-showing this other screen here about how you're going to put it to work right now. What are your whys and what are your hows? Back to our illustrious panelists. And I want to go first to Lisa to talk about her interest in this area, kind of where she's at, her whys and hows, and then sort of move across the screen to Justin and Joe. And Joe, we have your slides in here as well. So when we get to you, we'll show those for you. Lisa.
Yeah, we've just kind of started to dabble in looking at what does AI look in our school district? How can it help support us? And I think that as a district of 92,000 students, knowing that we are an urban school district, we transverse quite far across the Denver area. We're looking at this through an equity lens. Like, how can we take all that data, like Lalani said, we have so much of it, and how can we get to that point where we understand where our kids are, what our kids need for support around languages, around just moving forward in content, and especially in the era of COVID. We all talk about the COVID slide. We know that that's even stronger for our Black and Brown kids in our district. And so how can we use AI to help support our kids to be successful?
What is your how thinking? Like, what kind of how have you guys thought? Like, how are you going to address this?
We really haven't, that how is really a struggle right now. I think I think we've kind of gone through this part right here where you guys are talking about there is no one system. We need to push people who are in the industry to find that. We saw the graph at the beginning from Chad where it's all business orientated, and we have this word personalization over here, but we could buy 75 systems in order to personalize things for our kids. So how do we get how do we get that system that really is the one thing that we're going to, that pulls all that data for us? And I think that's what we're looking for, and we're not finding it. through research and reading online. We're just not finding the how right now.
Yeah, I want to come back to Chad. I'm going to call on you after I have each of these panelists speak, but I would like to mention that one of the things we like to talk about with regards to the level of AI that could be created, and I think AWS can speak to this really well, is what we like to call an analytics cap. So think about a piece of software that pulls from all of these individual systems, which you already own, and pulls it into a way to manipulate it and view it so that it's useful data. It's not a system, it's a system of systems. It pulls and sits centrally. So maybe, Lisa, we can come back to you on that comment too. Dr. Justin Aglio.
Thank you so much. So first of all, I think definitely at the right party because AI is definitely up my wheelhouse. So for years and years, school districts used to take this approach of adopting math curriculums and adopting programs and so forth. But we especially see now more than ever that it wasn't about adopting, it's about adapting. And school districts that were ahead of the game about adapting to students' needs and personalizing were able to handle what happened in the spring of all the remote learning and virtual learning. And about 5 years ago, we went down this pathway of artificial intelligence and personalized learning when we developed our tagline of student-centered, future-focused. What do students need in the classroom and how can we be future-focused about it? So anywhere from usage to time spent, mastery of learning within the curriculum, student learning on track, end of course goals, targeting, coaching, complexity with precision, those things that we've been doing kindergarten through 12th grade over the years. And I think in the springtime, that really helped us adapt to when students had to go remote learning. And even when I had a parent call me up one time, a 4th grade parent who said to me, he said, Dr. Aglio, what's the point of all of our kids doing the schoolwork at home? It seems like it's busy work. They're just on the computer some of the day. And I said, it's not busy work. Everything that your child is doing, everything on a computer, we are tracking on the back end. We're checking to see what they're doing, what things we can adapt to them. It's grouping them. It's putting them in small groups. It's meeting on their level, challenging them or remediating them. And we are actually seeing that. And everything that we're doing, I promised them, was being monitored by our teachers and actually giving special assignments from the teachers. But not only that, because we were doing that this spring, we feel very, very confident moving into the fall that we don't have this COVID slide moving into the school year because we have this data that supports the students' needs through predictive analytics of what students need when they come back in August, or knock on wood, they come back in August or September. And moving forward, one of the other hats that I wear is I'm a visiting scholar at Carnegie Mellon University's Human Computers Interactions Institute. And we do a lot of beta testing through some of the new ed tech tools that they develop with us. One's Geometry Tutor that our 10th grade students use. And it's a complete AI system that teaches students geometry. And I'll never forget when I talked to our teacher, Greg Thompson, about it. He said, wow, I have this new shift of how I teach within the classroom. I'm going from this teacher-directed instruction to the student-centered instruction. Before, I used to focus on covering the content. What skills do I need to teach today? But when he introduced them to his class to AI and using an adaptive software tutoring systems, then he was able to shift from the content I need to teach today to focus on, okay, I need to teach this learner today with my classroom, this student, the skills they need to go on and proceed. And I could talk later about, we shifted from students and teachers being consumers of AI to being more knowledgeable and producers. And back in the fall of 2018, we actually launched America's first artificial intelligence curriculum to all of our students, K through 12, where we teach all students within our school district what is artificial intelligence and how to use it, whether it's ethics, computer science, machine learning. And we're very excited to see where the future leads us.
That's great. So really, where you're at right now is you're actually using data in the teaching practice. Is that data coming out of your LMS combined with your SIS? Where's the data coming from?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it comes from all the different educational technology software tools that we use from kindergarten to 12th grade. And we meet as a team, teachers weekly during professional learning communities to look at common assessments and to measure where as teams we need the students to move. And collectively, administration and teachers, we get together approximately about every 6 weeks to look at as a team for 3-hour data meetings, we call them. And what we do around those data meetings is that we look for trends and patterns at the macro level, really down to the micro level, and then we action plan what we need to do based upon that data, whether we need to do more interventions, remediation, small groups, shift some the curriculum around a little bit, and action plan for the next 6 weeks so we meet together. Those the action plan really drives those professional learning communities, but also helps us plan and keeps us targeted. So we're always focused on what the learning is with the students.
That is great work, Dr. Aglio. I'm thinking that we're going to want way more detail as we go forward, and you just made yourself a target for a lot of people to want to talk to. All right, so Joe, I know you guys are just starting on your journey, and you were so kind to come out of retirement and agree to do this. St. Vrain is the only district in the nation to make the rank from the Learning Council of EduJedi 9th level, and they're just pushing forward. So they dragged you back in to the fray. So share with us.
I think there was a major error in the planning of this webinar because there is no way I should be following those two people. Just saying.
Well, you know, it came out of our conversation we had with Charles, that he brought you on board. So he threw you in, threw you under the bus, basically. But he had why, and you have an inkling of the how, and it goes with the slide, the sizzle. So talk to us about kind of what happened so far.
Yeah, so I've been full-time in the artificial intelligence world since late January. And very quickly, I realized that there is a lot of buzz or sizzle, as this picture shows. There is a lot of sizzle around artificial intelligence. There is very little actual stake when it comes to K12. And so that's why I thought I'd lead off with this slide, is just that sizzle to stake ratio is actually very poor. And so what I mean by that, actually, I really like this metaphor. I don't know if the folks watching the webinar have seen this particular model or something like it, but I guess I would just emphasize that whether it comes to artificial intelligence or any aspect of our work, especially in these crazy times, is like, let's just be really intentional about focusing on things inside of our zone of control. That's obviously the yellow in this picture. It's really easy to get distracted by things that we want to influence or change. I guess I just wanted to level set everybody, like since late January, what I've learned and I want to share with everybody on the call is let's focus on the zone of control, which leads into the next slide. So you probably see right away that student AI learning and experiences is at the base of the pyramid, right? That's the foundation. And I think if you really back things up and focus on what's in our control right now today, like literally everybody on this webinar, I would encourage us to focus on student artificial intelligence learning and hands-on experiences. What do I mean by that? Here's an example. Last school year, the school district started an artificial intelligence club. Started with eight high school students, right? But I would just encourage everybody on the call sometime this next year to start an AI club if you don't already have one. And then out of that club, you probably heard the old saying, what is the best way to learn something? Well, the answer is you teach it, right? And so as an example, the 8 students that are in our AI club in the school district are delivering summer AI, like fundamentals to AI class to both middle schoolers and high schoolers, right? So that's an extension of their learning. And they are hands-on creating next school year's AI curriculum, which will be deployed in 3 classes in different high schools. And so I guess I just wanted to start off with everybody like, hey, you know, I know we've got disruption in learning and budgets might be really, really bad, but at the end of the day, we're still going to have students, and there's nothing stopping us from starting an AI club and getting these kids like real experiences right out of the gate. Another example of that, once you have your AI club going, you'll be surprised at how many authentic projects and internships emerge, because we all know there's a huge artificial intelligence talent shortage. And imagine the leg up or the competitive advantage we're giving our students by providing them projects. Here's a great example. My school district sits on the Front Range of the Colorado Rockies, and it spans from Interstate 25 in the plains all the way up to the 14,000 foot peaks of Rocky Mountain National Park. And along that river, the St. Vrain River, there are multiple wildlife game cameras that for several years, the middle school teachers have been running these programs where they would take students out, and every month they would replace 24 batteries and swap out an SD card, and then take that SD card back to a laptop, download the images, label them, contribute them up to a bigger database of wildlife images. And the middle school teachers came to the high school artificial intelligence team and said, hey, is there a way that we can like automate this with artificial intelligence? And the really cool thing that I wanted to share with people is that once you get students involved in AI, vendors, mentors, people like that just come out of the woodwork. It started with Cisco Meraki. They donated some amazing video cameras, and Amazon Web Services. I can't tell you, I hope Chad's still on the call, but I can't tell you how much like passion and how many hours the AWS people have dedicated to these 8 high school kids making this CritterCam project work. So I just thought I'd start off with student experiences and AI learning, and it's just really exciting. Besides the internships with local companies, it's just all up from there. And I'll speed it up just a little bit here, Leilani. The transactional base of the pyramid is the next level up, right? And that's stuff that is not this. We're still inside the zone of control here, everybody. I wish I had more time to work on the slides, but the first 2 layers of this pyramid are still firmly in our zone of control. Student learning and transactional stuff. What I mean by transactional stuff is I'll bet almost everybody, if not 100% of the people on the webinar, have used a chat bot, right? On your mobile device, on a website, whatever. Chatbots, whether it's IBM's or AWS's, or there's a million of them, like I would highly encourage every school or district on this call to start taking advantage of chatbots. Double bonus if you have the students do it for you. There's things like robotic process automation. If you're not familiar with RPA, do yourself a favor and Google that. I mean, the long story short with robotic process automation, or RPA, is anything that is done repetitively on a computer should be done by a robot, not a human. Immediate efficiencies and cost savings. Then, of course, there are real vendors, like some folks on the call have already talked about, that are actually using AI today, and it's fantastic. They are the few vendors that are actually providing steak, not just sizzle. After I did a little digging in a few months ago, I found that the majority of vendors that claim they're using AI are actually using algorithms that are just program learning paths. Nothing to do with AI when you really start digging in. And so the first 2 levels, student learning and transactional, I want you to group those or circle those and call those Monday. Like these are things you can do Monday, right? And then the top of the pyramid is transformational. That's the someday stuff. That's when the magic black box that everybody's hoping is going to radically transform education. Well, that doesn't exist. May never. So that's just kind of how I've been viewing the world these last few months, Leilani, and wanted to share that with the webinar folks.
Yeah, it's great. We're all taking these steps. We're moving forward. I want to mention, because you were talking about student level learning, a good friend of ours, her name's Michelle Zimmerman. We'll make sure it goes into the notes in this webinar. So when we put out the recording, it's in the actual recording. But she wrote a book 2 years ago now on augmented intelligence teaching and learning, how to teach kids about AI. But she distinguishes between augmented intelligence and true AI. And it's this sort of a semantics question for a lot of people anyway. But also moving up into that transactional level all the way to transformational, there's been a lot of conversations in terms of true transformation of a system of systems, which is where AI is going with analytics, but then melded in there a conversation about workflow management, because the world of knowledge, we believe at the Learning Council, will always be shifting sands. You will have one lesson that has to change because a new standards wording for academic standards came out. So the foundation upon which the core learning is built is going to be shifting sands forever. Some of it's going to be all the way up to adaptive digital curriculum, which has fields it can collect that aren't in your learning management systems. So the workflow of what a student logs into versus what they now attend live versus where they go next, and it's a personalized path, but also intersected with teachers and classroom activity. Those are the issues. And once you can visualize how that could all come together, the Learning Council has called it the Uberization of learning, which is what we've been starting to write about. There's at least one article on the Learning Council website now talking about that future and what it will necessarily look like when you try to bring all those pieces together. So I'm really glad you talked about your journey so far, Joe, and distinguishing between what can be done now and where it's going and what might happen in the future. So I know Chad might be chomping at the bit. Chad, there's probably a lot we've said. You have a million comments to make. Can you take yourself off mute and go back to that earlier one where we were talking about sort of where this is going?
I don't want to take up too much time, but in a 5-minute intro, I would just say that we have schools that are starting to explore this today. I would say that they're pioneers. We're trying to promote their work. It's awesome what Joe's doing, and Joe, appreciate. We love to dive in with students. That's kind of the favorite thing of our K12 team. But we have schools that are taking 120 different sources of data, putting those into a data lake, and really learning what the data really says. It may be things that we never connected before. When I was a CTO, I wasn't able to connect transportation data with academic data. I didn't always know that kids that rode a school bus a certain amount of minutes a day had a certain average first period class. Like, those are the types of data that machine learning is able to kind of tell us, things that we never connected before. And so it's really exciting. We're glad to talk about it. I think we really want to highlight the panelists, but I'm sure we'll share our information, and we're glad to jump in and talk more about specific examples if that's something anybody on the call wants to do.
Yeah, and also, can you talk about sort of structure? Like,
Yep.
Most districts nationally have multiple systems. They're using maybe Renaissance learning, Dreambox learning, Accelerate learning, these different nominally adaptive digital curriculum sidebar stuff that's not in the learning management system, and it's up in the cloud somewhere, but they have access to it. They don't have back-end field access, but they have field access for all their own systems. So talk to us about the structure of how you're visualizing AI arcing above that and where you're going now. Yeah.
What we're really thinking about is, there's a couple of things, right? So every school is very complex. There's a kind of a spaghetti bowl of different information systems. But what we're really targeting is getting all that into one operational data store, and whether or not that data, that data doesn't always have to be structured. I think that's one of the things that has been most surprising as I talk to people that do artificial intelligence every day at AWS, the same people that are on the .com side of Amazon, thinking about how we predict things, using that same type of intelligence to help students. So it's really all about getting the data out of the current systems, those same projects that we partner with, the data standards groups like, EdFi Alliance and IMS Global, making sure that we get them out of the system into something that can talk to each other. And from that point, we can do many, many things. To me, one of the most exciting products we have that nobody knows about is called Amazon QuickSights, which is a pay-as-you-go business intelligence tool that has built-in machine learning. And so if a teacher, thinking of the idea of a teacher as analyst, goes in and does a query into that system, into that operational data store, they can certainly get out information, but the machine learning will also say, hey, did you notice this? This student is going down this path. And I think that's where it gets really interesting. And quite frankly, to Joe's point, we obsess over listening to our customers. So we need more customers to join into that type of scenario. So you can give us feedback on what types of solutions we can build. So we just announced a tool called AppFlow that can literally drag and drop point to a SaaS solution or an on-premise data source and pull that into a data store. Again, a way of just making it faster and easier, because this is all very complex. It takes a lot of people sometimes historically. So we're just trying to make it faster. So I'll stop there and get back to the panelists. But yeah, we're excited to collaborate.
So I'm going to come back to another sort of question level that I have, and that has to do with the data and whether or not as a school or district you own your data. Because I think there's a lot of language that has been put in with systems that isn't necessary. When you purchase systems or you're basically an instance of a system, either a server on premise or you've got a cloud instance, you write contracts as a school or district to own your data, but maybe you don't own all the actual data, like the time stamping for each transaction and the other sort of important data that might be around it. And then we've got, and I went back to this slide, which will be in the final deck, the data that's collected out there in courseware that you might not even have in your data map for fields to pull in from one of those that you're contracted with, and you might not even have a contract asking for that data from those adaptive digital courseware companies. So that's another question. So I want to find out, going back to our panelists, have you started thinking about the contracting you have to do to get all your data fields, or even, what thoughts you have on it at all? Lisa, do you want to make a comment on that?
Sure. I think that in Colorado, we have a pretty tight student data privacy laws. So we spend a lot of time making sure that we have a data privacy agreement so that we do own our data. So we definitely spend a lot of time doing that when we purchase any type of software or any type of management system that they're using. That's very important to us, and something that I think we're looking at as well as we look at AI, making sure that we do own all that data.
Good. Dr. Aglio, you want to comment on that?
Yeah, just two quick comments. I think when it comes to software and educational technology tools, number one, you have to make sure that it's being maximized to its fullest capacity, being used within the curriculum and, more importantly, within the classroom instructionally. And number two is there are a lot of different companies out there. One comes to the top of my mind. It's called On Hand Schools, and we use them where we migrate all of our data into one system for them. And they actually provide coaching on how your data is being used within your school and to make recommendations for you. So, but there's other products out there as well that takes, whether it's kindergarten through 12th grade, you have 600 or 800 different points you're collecting. There's tools out there that actually bring all that into one software to help you manage it and to help navigate through the data so you can actually use it and plan it.
The interesting thing is that I think this road goes really far in terms of data field mapping and what fields maybe don't exist yet that we need in schools and districts in order to tell, like, who was the last person to touch this particular transaction or this data packet, or who made the last change. There's just a ton of little considerations, if you understand database construction, that are critical. And there's data coming out of some of these other systems or that are being used by kids under contract that we could get data from, that don't necessarily usually give data out but should be required to. So there's just a ton of that. So I think we're in a little bit gray area right now still. So Joe, any comments?
No, I think Lisa nailed it as far as that question goes. But I'd like to comment on what you just said, Leilani, about how we may not have exactly the right data fields and map to the right way and all that sort of topic. For me, that is the great promise of artificial intelligence, is that it can it can make those connections, especially in unstructured data formats like data lakes and things like that. So for me, there's long-term hope that the technology will actually outperform our lack of planning, if you will.
Yeah, and I think any step is the right step right now to go in the direction of trying to harness some technology to do some more of a heavy lift. And for all the reasons that I was communicating earlier, we're seeing a pressure storm coming at K12 nationally. We're all forced to introduce the American public, parents and students, to remote learning. And some of it went really bad. Some of it, school districts were trying to do the same physical structure they had on campus at home with 5-year-olds and 8-year-olds. It sort of wrecked families. I mean, the stuff all over the social media sites about I'm not doing this anymore. It's funny, but it's not funny. So we're in a moment now where there are budget issues and it's a perfect storm. And the economy may recover, but we still are going to have to deal with a new normal of what are we doing and why aren't we doing this in a better way. So I think any step you make is the right step. Your curiosity, you're trying to get something to carry some of that burden. Because if we're not getting the achievement we wanted even before this, now we have to level up our game. So, Chad, I want to come back to you for final comments and then any final comments from the panelists. Lisa, any advice you want to give?
Yeah, so I think along Justin talking about, I think we have 3-hour data meetings every week too, and we spend that time looking at our students and making sure they're on track to graduate by using an on track to graduate and all these things. But I think we're looking for how can we lessen that 3-hour data meeting. I love whoever said that, like, AI is going to think about things that we're great teachers. I was a former teacher. I did everything I could to observe what my kids were doing, but what are those things that maybe AI could pick up on to help me move my kids forward faster? Or especially now in remote learning, I may not be seeing my kids as much. So how can I use those things to help my kids move forward faster, catch them up from where they are? And so I think that we're looking at how can it help, I want to say save time, because I think as a teacher, I think if we ask teachers right now, they all say, what do they want more of? And they would all say time. So how can we lessen that 3-hour data meeting into an hour where that data has already come together for us and we can say, great, we know what we need to do tomorrow in learning to help that student move forward and not waiting to get data in. That data is just constantly coming in to me to help me support my students moving forward. So I think that's what we're looking for with AI, and that seamless transition of all that data and time saving. Teachers don't want to give up teaching, and they don't want to give up that connection to students. So if they can have that and somebody else can help them with the other stuff, I think that's what we're looking for.
Yeah, excellent. Because right now, nationally, the social emotional need is very high, and more humanity is needed in the work of schools, and if technology can provide for more time. Dr. Aglio.
Yeah, just 2 quick comments, and I'll piggyback off Lisa with the connections to the students, to teachers. Ed tech will never take the place of the teacher in the classroom. So how can we take tools like AI and maybe combine it with a tool like augmented reality, AR, to make sure teachers have more time to teach students rather than look at data like Lisa was saying or something like that. And I'll just talk about a quick project that we've been working on. We have in our math class, we have students working through an adaptive software tutoring system, and the teacher wears a smart glasses, Microsoft HoloLens, and she can see emoji signs above every kid's head through AR based upon how they're progressing through the AI software. And she can actually take her finger, but the emoji signs reflect how the students are progressing through the software. But she can actually take her finger there and poke on the emoji signs in midair and actually can see the problem that the student's working on, and on the left-hand column in midair, all the problems that student's struggling in. So she can attend that student right away to make sure that the lesson's individualized for that student, but also collecting back end data on the back end to help that student. So just kind of think about those, how we can combine AI to assist teachers more than just through machine learning, but through also other technologies. And the second comment is, I know Joe said, starting to make sure students have ownership in AI. And that's why we started our AI program 2 years ago. It's inclusive. Every single kid in our district, K through 8, takes several AI courses throughout the year. In high school, also, we introduce AI courses from AI ethics, machine learning, to computer science, to experiments. We have robots that deliver packages to classrooms in elementary school. So how can we immerse students in that AI world? Because the World Economic Report came out, and there's thousands of reports that AI is #1 job trend and a #2 job trend in the country in 2022. 300 million jobs opening right now, and these are kids graduating in 2020. And AI is in the palm of their hands, and it's influencing every major sector. So, and we know it's influencing every single content area. So that's why it's important not just to teach AI exclusively through certain classes, but how can we teach it inclusively through all content areas?
Great. Joe, last advices?
Well, first a comment. I want to be a student in Dr. Justin's school district. That sounds awesome. Really. No, I guess I'd just like to end by suggesting to everybody on the webinar that, just keep in mind that it really is true that direction is more important than speed. And you're hearing 3 different panelists and an expert from Amazon Web Services talking about this whole topic, but really, moving in the AI direction is what's important, regardless of your speed. So I just want to remind everybody that, and bonus points if you lead with students.
Okay, Chad, you want to bring in last comment?
Yeah, I'll echo what everybody said. Joe's right. I think the biggest thing that I see with schools that are going down this path is that it seems so out of reach. And when I talk to schools, I try to talk about, starting small, whether that's artificial intelligence, machine learning, or that's just cloud in general. Start small, kind of learn along the way, and let the smaller things that you do inform your larger decisions. So I just encourage schools to not be overwhelmed. Like, we're here to help. I think Joe highlighted that. We're glad to dig in, big or small, and talk about this, because I think it's going to be a critical aspect of education moving forward, and I think we have to get it right. And so we're open, we're pretty easy to find. I'm at K12 CTO on Twitter if you want to find me that way, but I think we'll be doing some follow-up, so we're glad to engage with anybody on the call. Appreciate the chance to be a part of it.
Yeah, I'm going to end off here with a reminder to join the EduJedi Leadership Society. If you haven't already, there is a course in there on analytics. I'm Lonnie Coffin from the Learning Council. Hope to see you again on another webinar. Goodbye for now.